You're listening to
and such a short amount of time to do it in. We were really
a Mamma Mia podcast.
Who are you? What do you want? How do you get there? Do you need some thinking music? Ben Crowe has sat down with some of the most famous, successful and talented people in the world and asked those exact 3 questions. But he also works with regular people because you don't have to be famous to know what it's like to feel a bit lost or unfocused, especially right now. In his work as a mindset coach, Ben encourages people to embrace their weird, own their story, and find a purpose.
In its simplest form, purpose is to do something for someone else. And the good news is you get to decide what it is you want to do for them and who it is you want to do it for.
From Mamma Mia, you're listening to No Filter, a podcast where people from all walks of life tell their stories very candidly and aren't afraid to be vulnerable. My name is Mia Friedman, and today Ben Crowe helped me to articulate my purpose. And if you're keen, he's going to help you articulate yours. There's a good reason why Ben is Australia's most in-demand professional mentor and leadership coach right now. Before he started his own business, called Mojo Crow, Ben worked in the Just Do It team, helping Nike's athletes work out who they are outside the sport they were famous for. He's worked with everyone from Ash Barty to Dylan Alcott, Andre Agassi to Stephanie Gilmore. He's worked with special ops forces, teenagers, world champions and world leaders. Ben's all about helping people find a balance between confidence and happiness, and balancing achievement with fulfillment. It feels like we have never needed a mindfulness coach more than we do right now during this crazy time. So what advice can Ben give us? You're going to love this. Here is my conversation with the bloke everyone can't stop talking about, Ben Crowe. You're a mindset expert. You've worked with the top athletes in the world to prepare them for obstacles and the hardest moments in their career. Can we start with maybe you giving us all a little bit of a pep talk?
Good, simple, nice, easy question to launch into, Mia. Where to start with there? I guess some general observations that I'm observing in terms of how people are dealing with or working their way through the current situation. Perspective, by virtue of Oxford Dictionary, means the way you see something, yeah, or your attitude towards something. And it's fair to say that's your perspective that will get you through difficult times. Yeah, certainly pandemics, but the macro trend we're observing is that as a human race, we don't do uncertainty very well. And as uncertainty is one of the tenets of vulnerability, we don't do vulnerability very well either. You know, certainty and routine have been replaced with uncertainty and unpredictability and vulnerability and some of these things. And we either lean into those or we suffer. It's literally that simple. We either lean into the uncertainty, the vulnerability of life that we suffer. And an example of perspective might be, especially what's going on around the world, whether it's Afghanistan or India and so forth. I said to you, Mia, are you stuck at home or are you safe at home? You answer that question in terms of your perspective, yeah? Clients would say to me, you know, I've got to take the kids to school, I've got to help a client, I've got to do something for my wife. And I'd say to them, if you flip the O to an E in gotta, it changes from I got to I get to. Yeah, I get to take the kids to school. I get to help a client. I get to do something for my wife. And that simple flip from an O to an E alters your perspective from one of expectation or entitlement to one of appreciation, yeah, or feeling lucky. I'm so lucky I get to spend some time with my kids in the morning. I'm so lucky I got a job. Yeah, I get to help a client, or I get to spend some time with my soulmate in the evening. And that's what I mean by it's your perspective, Mia, that will get you through these difficult times. Yeah, but as a human race, we're not deciding our perspective. We're letting the conditions of our environment decide our perspective for us, which is effectively saying if it's rainy, I'll be shitty. If it's sunny, I'll be happy, which is crazy, right? We're abdicating responsibility for living. Responsibility, by definition, means my ability to choose my response. And that's what I'm hoping that through the process of realizing that we have the power to decide our response, then we can start to alter our perspective in so many ways, right? And I guess the biggest truism that I'd love everyone to know is this too shall pass. Yeah, the world will get through this. You will get through this. But this chapter will define so many people, especially those who realize it's your decisions, not the conditions that determines your mindset, your attitude, and your self-worth. But as I said, at the moment, we're not deciding our attitude, so we're letting the conditions decide our attitude for us, and taking control of our story and control of our mindset and our attitude and our perspective is one of the opportunities that we can lean in to get through this period.
I want to talk about uncertainty. You mentioned it just then, and I think that is the signature thing that everybody has had to get comfortable with, if you can ever get comfortable with the discomfort of uncertainty. Literally nothing is certain. You can have a donut day in the morning and be in lockdown by the evening. You can be at school one day and sent home indefinitely the next. You can't plan for anything in the future. How do we get our heads around this? Because it's not a normal way to live.
Yeah, well, on uncertainty, there's these 6 needs. In fact, Tony Robbins talks about them beautifully. These 6 needs that every human on the planet has, right? It's the need for certainty, the need for uncertainty, the need for significance, the need for love and connection, the need for growth, and the need for contribution. And we all have these needs, right? We just have them in different order. But when times are tough, unfortunately, we over-index on certainty and significance to the detriment of leaning into uncertainty and, love and growth and contribution. And I think that's one of the issues today is if we need to lean into uncertainty right now, if it's one thing that COVID has shown the whole world, that life itself is uncertain and unpredictable and unexpected and unscripted and vulnerable. And we either learn to lean in and accept that or we suffer. One of the definitions of vulnerability is leaning into risk, uncertainty, and emotional exposure, as Brené Brown so beautifully articulated. And we either lean into the risk and the uncertainty, the emotional exposure. If we don't, we have this illusion of control, this illusion that we can make things certain, which we literally can't. And I think that's distracting the world today on steroids. So part of the process is identifying what is my flavor of distraction? What are the things that I can't control, but wanting to control them? Right? And focusing on something I can't control but wanting to control it is the definition of anxiety or stress or pressure or worry. So the process requires us to accept the things we can't control and focus back on the things we can control and the best version of ourselves. So we can't control when the pandemic is going to finish. We can't control how many lives will be lost. We can't control how much money will be lost. We can't control where our neighbours will be okay. We can care about them, make it part of our consideration set, but wanting to control it and wanting to make things certain is one of the illusions that's causing so much suffering today. So the process is to identify, what's my flavour of distraction? What are the things that I can't control, but by wanting to control it is causing me to be anxious or stressed or worried? And then accepting those things we can't control and focusing back on the things we can. And as a human race, Mia, we do not understand how powerful acceptance is. It's a superpower, if you like, if we can learn to harness acceptance in the right way. There's a beautiful book called The Road Less Travelled. It's considered one of the top 3 most important books ever written. No, you don't need to read it. It's a deep psychology book. But the punchline's on the first page. In fact, it's the first 2 lines of the first page. The first line of The Road Less Travelled is 3 words. Life is difficult. But the second sentence is the clincher. Once you accept that life is difficult, life is no longer difficult. The power's in the acceptance, yeah? We're just not accepting as a human race, and therefore we're getting distracted and suffering as a consequence.
But I'm going to challenge you on that because, you can say, accept the fact that trying to supervise remote learning with little kids while working yourself or worried that you're losing your job or not being able to see a sick parent because they're in a different city and you're locked down, that's difficult. Accepting that it's difficult doesn't make it any easier.
Oh, this is not easy at all. This is ridiculously hard. Yeah, vulnerability is not easy. It's just necessary. You've got to acknowledge that life is difficult. Absolutely. This is ridiculously hard what we're all going through right now. So don't deny your emotions. Don't shut them down and pretend they're not real. They're absolutely real. Once you can acknowledge them, then you can process them, right? And ask yourself 2 questions. Is there anything I can do about it? And if so, take action. And if not, can I accept it? They're kind of the 2 options that we've got. Suffering is the 3rd option there. And part of the process is kind of identifying, okay, can I do something about this situation? And if so, I'm going to take action. And if not, can I accept it? And that's the challenge, if you like, for all of us.
With uncertainty, do men and women process it differently?
Can't answer that question, Mia. I think in different conditions, in different situations, we handle uncertainty differently, in the same way that we all get distracted for very different reasons as well. So, yeah, it's a great question. I don't know, to be frank, whether it's a gender-based issue around how we handle uncertainty. I think it's the degree of which it's affecting us.
What about insecurity? You've done some work looking at the key insecurity of men and the key insecurity of women and what the difference is. What have you learned about that?
Insecurities in terms of anxieties, in terms of the stories we tell ourselves. And I think that's probably an interesting element. And it's, for all of us, it's to realise that our life story is not our life, it's just our story, and we're the author of it, right? We are the stories we tell ourselves about ourselves. And as the author of your own life story, the good news is you get to write the ending, right? You get to imagine the ending and dial up imagination and dream big, yeah? But as the author of your own life story, you'll also have the opportunity to go back to these crucible moments in our teenage years or 20s or 30s where we accidentally, inadvertently attached our self-worth to a negative experience that developed this insecurity or this not enoughness story or this shame story, if you like. And the goal is to kind of identify what's my version of not enoughness that's causing this insecurity later on in life, so that I can identify it and reframe it or accept it or let it go or forgive. And for all of us, it's different in terms of the stories we told ourselves and the insecurities that it may have created at its extreme, imposter syndrome or, inferiority complex or superiority complex in terms of those insecurities, and kind of identify what's my flavour of it so that I can reframe it and kill it while it's a baby before it becomes Godzilla and consumes my whole life.
I wanted to ask you for an example of that, but shall we use me as an example?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
In terms of a story or a bad experience that we've made. Is that what you mean? Like something bad that's happened to us that we've then absorbed a lot of shame around, or it's changed the way we feel about ourselves?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, insecurity, I guess, in terms of an anxiety or a story we tell ourselves that I'm not enough something, I'm not good enough, loved enough, smart enough, successful enough or whatever, and it's causing me to feel insecure in a certain relationship. I could answer it a different way, which may lead into an actual exercise, Mia, if you want to go down that path as well.
Sure.
In any situation, we tell ourselves one of two stories. Either I'm enough or I'm not enough. And it happens in a blink of an eye. We don't even realise we're doing it, right? It happens subconsciously. And if we tell ourselves that second story, that I'm not enough, we effectively create a vertical relationship between ourselves and the other person, which will create an insecurity, yeah? And we're all doing this, by the way. Everywhere we go, we're creating these vertical relationships where we either put ourselves below others, which at its extreme is an inferiority complex, or we put ourselves above others, which at its extreme is a superiority complex. We start, I and dominating and so forth. But they both come from the same place, feeling that I'm not enough. And the antidote to these vertical relationships is horizontal relationships. Because when you create horizontal relationships everywhere you go, you are enough, but so is everyone else. Everyone on the planet is equal. Yeah, we're different. We might look different, come from different backgrounds, but fundamentally we're equal. And when you create horizontal relationships, you are enough. And the way to do that, the way to replace these insecurities and these vertical relationships with horizontal relationships is to create courage mantras for yourself. In those situations where the insecurity may arise, you might tell yourself a story that you're not enough, whatever it is, and you get to reframe that in real time. And the way to do that, in fact, let's do it, if that's okay, Mia, let's do it together.
Sure.
And it's based on really just answering two questions. And this is one of the early exercises in our mindset course. So how do you show up when you're anxious or afraid or feeling insecure? Do you go to silence or do you go to violence? Yeah, do you go to fight or flight or freeze, right? Do your cheeks go all red and hope no one asks you a question, or do you go the other way?
I think I go to fight.
Go to fight.
Yeah, I think
gotcha.
I do.
Okay, beautiful. So the second question is, when does that happen? Under what situations? What's the conditions? What's the context of that? Is it when you walk in a room and you feel like you're being judged? Is it when you feel like you're losing control of a situation or you can't do something? So, what is it for you?
Yes, if I feel that someone's betrayed me,
Yep.
I go into that. If I feel like someone's abandoned me,
Yep.
I'll go into that. And if I feel like someone has threatened me.
Yep. Okay, unreal. Well done. Now, this is the fun bit. What could you say to yourself in real time, the next time that happens, that it enables you to stand your ground and go tall rather than small? And this is where you're going to create a courage mojo for yourself. And it might be as simple as, I'm imperfect, but I'm worthy. Or it might be, I am enough. Or it might be, I'm a warrior, not a worrier. Yeah. I did this exercise for 500 CEOs in Moscow and 500 female CEOs in Sydney and in London and thousands of teenagers. And the overwhelming mantra that they came up with that they had in common was, I've got this. Yeah, I can do this. Yeah. So what's yours, Mia? You can steal one of those, or what, in your own words or your own vernacular, what can you see yourself next time you're feeling that sense of, betrayal or abandonment or being threatened, to hold your ground in that moment? What would be your version?
The phrase that comes to mind is, this isn't about me.
Yeah, beautiful. So that is a great example of a courage mantra. And then your role, your homework for me, please, Mia, is to step outside of yourself the next week and see in any situation, it might be with your kids or your partner, or it might be professionally at Mamma Mia or dealing with a client or a friend, those situations when that insecurity might arise and we feel a sense of betrayal or ashamed or threatened, and then try that mantra, right? This isn't about me. Yeah, and see if that is the solution. And you might find that, no, there's something else that comes to mind. And when we can develop these courage mojos for ourselves to create that unconditional sense of self in any conditions, right? The conditions don't determine my self-worth. I decide that for myself. So Catherine Freeman's, before the Sydney Olympics, when we put her in that ridiculous Nike Swift suit, the courage mantra that she used that night was, do what I know, do what I know, do what I know. And that just centered her, if you like, and felt that sense of unconditional self-worth and self-confidence. Michelle Payne's, before she won the Melbourne Cup, she literally looked up to the sky and said, let's do this. And she looked up to her mum and her sister who had been killed in horse riding accidents, and she said, stay with me. Yeah, so they were her two courage mantras in that particular situation. So if we can identify how we show up when we're feeling anxious or stressed, right, what the conditions are, when does that occur, and then we can practice these courage mantras that enables us to stand our ground, right? It doesn't mean we'll win. It doesn't mean we'll win the situation. What it does mean is we'll bring the best version of ourselves to the dance floor, and that's the only expectation, I guess, Mia, over any of us.
When you say about bad experiences or being shamed, and you say, my mantra, for example, is, this isn't about me, or what about when it is? So, for example, I have experienced a number of really bad social media pile-ons, and they have been very specifically directed at me, and they feel very personal, and I have huge fear and anxiety around that. Or say someone breaks up with you. I mean, that is about you. You can say whatever you want, but really they don't want to be with you. Are there some things that you just can't frame positively?
I think the way I'll answer that question, Mia, is I feel like my hypothesis is we're all in search of the same one thing, unconditional love. Love without any conditions. And when you can give that to yourself, unconditional love, you can say, okay, this is who I am. These are the cards I've been dealt. This is my lot in life. And just learn to accept ourselves unconditionally. Then we can have confidence in ourselves and confidence in others as our comrades rather than our competitors, right? And then we can contribute to their life in some way, shape or form. But if I can't accept myself unconditionally, I put conditions on myself, then I can't have confidence in myself or others. I'll see them as my competitor. And then I'll start comparing myself against others, and then I'll start judging myself against others as well. And as soon as I start comparing and judging, I'm letting all this interference in. The goal, Mia, is to own your story unconditionally and celebrate you unconditionally. It's not whether you're in a relationship or not, or you're being criticised or not, and that kind of beautiful man in the arena, it's not the critic who counts. The goal is to love yourself unconditionally. And if you care what people think about you or say about you, you're putting conditions on your self-worth. You're letting others determine who you are. You're making them give you what you're not prepared to give yourself. Because if you can give that love to yourself, you don't care what anyone thinks about you. You still care about them. Don't get me wrong, because we're hardwired for connection as humans. You just don't care what others think about us. And when you can look at yourself in the mirror and say, I don't care what anyone thinks about me, but I care about them, you've got all the power in the world. You're totally empowered. But until you can say that, you lose your power. because you're constantly caring what people are thinking about you and saying about you, and then trying to fit in, if you like, to unrealistic or imaginary expectations of others, and that will cause a distraction. There's effectively two questions that all humans on the planet have to answer. The first one is, who am I? Like, really, who am I? And kind of connect with myself, the human being, not the human doing.
What might be the answer to who am I? That seems like a pretty big question.
It is a big question, but you can strip it back and you can start on think of yourself as an onion layer and peel back the onion layers from the outer surface, which is, the clothes that you've got on now, or your identity, or...
What would you say? How do you answer that question?
How do I answer that question?
Yeah.
Well, I strip back I'm an Australian, I'm a mentor, I'm a male, whatever it is, ex-Nike, so forth, and get closer to the core and focus more on the human being. So once I connect with that, I say, what kind of human does Ben Crowe want to be this year? I might say, I want to be grateful, I want to be playful, I want to be happy, I want to be loving, I want to be caring, and then I can attach the human I want to be to the things I love to do, or my various roles in my life. And therefore I might tell you, I am a grateful son, or I'm a loving soulmate, or I'm a playful dad, or I'm a mischievous mate, or I'm a wannabe golfer, right? When you can attach the kind of human you want to be with the things you love to do, those words, if I said to you, okay, for the rest of this year, Mia, what kind of human do you want to be? What words would you, off the top of your head, what would come to mind? What kind of human does Mia want to be for the rest of this year, or the rest of your life for that matter? What kind of words? What words would you say?
Brave.
Brave, yep.
Stable.
As in calm?
Yeah. Supportive. Playful. Kind.
Beautiful.
Grateful's good too. Chuck that in there.
So the amazing thing about the words you've just given me, brave, calm, supportive, playful, kind, grateful, you don't need anything externally or anyone externally to be that person. You don't need money. You don't need me. You decide, I'm going to be brave. I am calm. I am supportive. I am playful. I am kind. I'm grateful. You control that person 100%. That can be the expectation of you tomorrow when you wake up in the morning. Write a to-be list before you write a to-do list. Because whatever words you write down next, and you've just given me 6 beautiful words, you control that human being. You can be that person. There are so many things with the pandemic that you can't control, that are outside of your control. But the human that you want to be in that moment, you can be that person. And it's quite liberating when we realise, I can reconnect with the human being. And I said to all my clients at the start of COVID last year, I said, right, regardless of whether you're religious or you believe in God, let's just assume for the purpose of the exercise, the world's trying to tell us something with this pandemic. And I always ask the same thing. What do you reckon she's trying to tell us? And overwhelmingly, unanimously, they all said the same thing. They said they reckon the world's trying to tell us to stop doing and start being, to do less and be more connected to myself, the human being, not the human doing, to my family or to nature or to friends. And they said they want to stop saying busy when someone says, how are you? Right? Since when did busy become an emotion? Pre-COVID, busy was an addiction, right? This addiction to being busy. So the goal is to connect back with the human you want to be, right? The things you can control, and less so the human doing.
Mia Friedman, and you're listening to No Filter with Ben Crowe. I want to ask you about a more female condition, which is the need to constantly look a certain way that we all feel, that we all marinate in as women. And I wanted to take you back to what you were saying a little bit earlier about comparison and, how comparison is the thief of joy. Essentially, for women, we are hardwired and it's in our DNA to compare ourselves, and we also marinate in a society that tells us we're not thin enough, we're not pretty enough, we're not young enough. You've got women having Botox and having surgery at a rate that men aren't, because that's what society tells us we need to do to have value in this society. Why are we doing this? And I'm not putting myself separate to that. I mean, I dye my hair and I buy very expensive serums and do all of those things in pursuit of some aesthetic. How do we break free of that? Because women we spend so much time feeling bad about ourselves.
Yeah, and I mentor probably more female CEOs than I do male around the world, and probably mentor more female athletes than I do male athletes as well. As you were asking the question, I was kind of reflecting on my client list, and what I would say is shame is gender neutral. We just have different flavours of shame and different flavours of distraction as well. The number one fear for men worldwide is looking weak, not being strong. The number one fear for women is body image. The number one fear for athletes is looking dumb, unintelligent, because at a pretty young age they get put into a system at the age of 13 or 14. Female tennis player, male tennis player, it doesn't matter. And even though they're going after their goals and dreams, hopefully they see their mates go off and finish school, go to college, get jobs. And there's a part of them that thinks, geez, if this doesn't work out, maybe I'm not good enough or smart enough in any other career. It's not real, it's not rational, it's just these stories that we tell ourselves. So in the same way that a female CEO might go into a boardroom and go, shoes, I'm the only one in here. I'm the only female in this room. And that might expose that kind of imposter syndrome that maybe I'm not good enough. We mentioned that question I asked you, when do you show up when you're anxious and stressed? And for a lot of women in alpha male industries, it might be in that very situation. They look around the room, they go, I am the only one here. Therefore, it exposes that vertical relationship. And we either, geez, I'm not, inferiority complex, or superiority complex, and we start going the other way and we overcompensate and we dominate and we try and justify ourselves. It doesn't need justification rather than just accepting ourselves. And that courage mantra might be, you know what, I'm a good person. I do the right thing for the right reason. Yes, I'm the only female in this room, but that's okay. I am worthy. I am worthy of love, belonging, connection, and taking you on a journey, gentlemen, and show up from that place. And that authenticity enables your integrity to shine in that moment. In the same way that for men, it might be a very different situation where they compare themselves against other men and tell themselves they're not strong enough or smart enough or successful enough or whatever it is. So it's really just understanding what is my flavour of distraction and what is my not enoughness story, if you like. And a lot of people say, where does shame come from? And not always, but often we crave the love we felt like we didn't get enough of as kids. So I might have craved my dad's love more than my mum's or my mum's love more than my dad's. It's not real. It's not rational. It's just these stories we tell ourselves. And as a consequence of craving that love we felt like we didn't get enough of, we often felt from a very young age that we had to do something or achieve something in order to get their attention, to make them love us. And that's the first time that shame might appear in your life, the first time you tell yourself that story that you're not worthy unconditionally or you're not loved unconditionally. It's conditional upon being a good student or a good athlete or a good musician or just good around the house or be a pleaser and I'll placate my parents or my teacher or kiss ass to the boss and then I'll feel enough. And that's the first time that you're not loved unconditionally. And that story just constantly shows up in different chapters of your life, in different moments in your life, when again you tell yourself that story that, geez, maybe I'm not worthy of this relationship or this job and so forth. So it's just that shame story reappearing in different costumes. And the goal is to kind of identify where it came from, what the source of it was, so that you can forgive or let go or reframe or accept and show up from a more positive, affirmation-based version of your life story, this time written by your inner fan, Mia, not your inner critic.
So what about when really bad things happen? You talk about writing your story and perspective on things. I have friends who've lost children tragically or lost partners or had terrible diagnoses or lost parents at a young age. How do you make sense of that in your story?
Beautiful question. We often say that your greatest growth comes from your darkest times. Your greatest learnings come from your most difficult times in life because it unlocks this extraordinary humility, right? Because you're on your knees. You're at the lowest of lows. That then unlocks this curiosity, if you like. Well, geez, how do I get through this? I've just lost a child or I've just lost a parent or so forth. I told this story recently, a gentleman by the name of Mo Gawdat, who's one of the most brilliant mathematicians on the planet. He's one of the founders of Google X. And he tells the story much better than I can of being on a family holiday and he lost his son. And he said the difference between having a beautiful holiday and losing his son was 4 hours. And after his son passed away, he had this overwhelming sense of, what can I do to bring Ali back? And he said nothing that he could have done, including locking himself in his room and crying for the rest of his life, was going to bring Ali back. And he had this sense of, well, I can choose to suffer for the rest of my life, or I can start to develop a sense of almost purpose and dedication to my life to try and make, in his case, try and make the world a little bit better than it was the day he lost his son. And to dedicate the rest of his life, and the power of dedication is extraordinary, right? I dedicate certain aspects of my life to one of my best mates who committed suicide, to my dad who passed away, to a client who died in a car accident. And it just means your life goes to a much higher level, or a deeper purpose, if you like, when you can dedicate your life that, you're still here, if you like, you're still standing, and dedicate it to a memory or a person or an individual. And Mo Gawdat said, I can choose to suffer, or I can try and dedicate my life to helping other people in some way, shape or form. And he set this goal to try and make 10 million people happy. And because he's a mathematician, he tried to develop this algorithm for happiness. And he did. And his algorithm was happiness is equal to or greater than the difference between the way we see the events of our life and our expectations of those events. And he said happiness is looking at a glass half full and saying, can I be truly grateful for it? And look at the glass half empty and say, can I do anything about it? And if not, can I accept it? And those two questions are absolute superpowers, right? I work with all my clients. They ask themselves those same two questions. Can I do anything about it? If not, can I accept it? So turning adversity into possibilities often comes from the reframing and developing a sense of purpose and meaning and contribution, if you like. And Man's Search for Meaning, Viktor Frankl tells beautiful stories, in terms of how he survived Auschwitz while his wife perished, his mum and dad, his brother, his friends. He got out of there and he wrote that beautiful book in 7 days. And one of the most beautiful lines in that book is everything can be taken from a person except for one thing, the last of the human freedoms, to choose one's attitude in any given set of circumstances, to choose one's own way. Through that process and that sense of finding purpose and meaning for something beyond ourselves, I find the power of dedication is pretty powerful, Mia, in those kind of situations, to try and find some sense of purpose and meaning to how we go on when we've lost loved ones.
Ben, you've worked with some of the most iconic, high-achieving figures in business and in sport. What about regular people? What about someone who's just living their life, doing an ordinary job? How do they find their purpose, and what's holding them back? Is it not being able to define their purpose? Because not everybody can change the world. Not everybody can win Wimbledon. Not everybody can make up an algorithm that makes 10 million people happy.
Yeah, absolutely. And by the way, I work with a lot of very normal people who aren't, high profile or celebrity in nature, or aren't CEOs either. So what I would say is everyone in the world is after the same two things. And that's why we've developed this digital course and scale it to the whole planet, right? Working with the World Health Organization on it at the moment. Everyone's in search of the same two things, confidence and happiness. Answering that first question, who am I, is where we'll find confidence, certainly confidence in ourselves. Answering the second question, what do I want, is where we'll find happiness, especially if unlocking what we want not only unlocks a sense of purpose and meaning and contribution, but also unlocks our values and our goals and our motivations and our needs and our dreams. And answering the third question, how do I get there, is where we find our mojo. And it's where confidence and happiness comes together. So everyone on the planet has to answer those same three questions. Answering the first question, who am I, is where we'll find that unconditional sense of self-worth. Yeah, the human being, not the human doing. And that's where we get to embrace our weird or celebrate our imperfections, so to speak, but find that unconditional sense of self-worth. This is who I am. This is who Mia Friedman is. Yeah, I am a grateful daughter, or I am a loving soulmate, yeah, or I am a present leader. And when you connect with the human, you create these mantras for yourself, these words for yourself, because we're all on this hero's journey. Everyone on the planet is on this hero's journey. And the hero's journey was this beautiful framework created by Joseph Campbell in the 1960s. And it's a beautiful framework for how we live our own lives. So think of Lord of the Rings or Star Wars. They're all based on the hero's journey, which is based on 3 chapters of our life. Chapter 1, it's all about me, I. So think of Frodo and Samwise hanging out in the Shire doing whatever they want, yeah, but it's all about them. Chapter 2 is we start having these crucible moments. So Frodo had to decide whether he was going to go on this potentially life-ending journey, yeah? And in chapter 3, he decides he wants to destroy the ring and save the world. Or Luke Skywalker decides he wants to become a Jedi Knight and save the galaxy. It's a beautiful metaphor for how we live our own lives. So chapter 1 of your hero's journey, Mia, it's all about you. Me, I. I win a race at school, I get a blue ribbon. I work hard at my grades, I get an A. I work hard at my job, I get promoted or paid more. We get recognised for achievement and it makes us feel significant, but it's very much on an individual level, yeah? That's chapter 1 of your hero's journey. Chapter 2 of your hero's journey is we start having these crucible moments, these life-altering moments, and they're laced with meaning. It might be a relationship, an event, an experience.
Good or bad?
Exactly right, good or bad. Sometimes they're good, sometimes they're bad. It might be a pandemic, it might be winning a premiership, right? But we have these crucible moments and they're laced with meaning and we need to make sense of them because they're either going to hold us back and live our lives bitter and twisted in denial, that kind of, post-traumatic stress, or they're going to project us forward, post-traumatic growth. But you decide. So you've got to lean into that because that will get us into chapter 3 of our hero's journey. And when you can get into chapter 3 of your hero's journey, wow, life is beautiful. Life is free. Life is liberating. Life is bliss, as Joseph Campbell would say. Because when you get from chapter 1 into chapter 3, it's the transformation from I to we. And that's when you become an authentic leader. But that's when you realize another one of life's great truisms, and that is life's not about you. Life's about the impact you can have on someone else's life. Yeah, to care about them, to serve them, to love them, to be interested, not interesting. And when you get into chapter 3 of your hero's journey, that's when you find a sense of purpose and meaning and contribution beyond yourselves. And we're all on that same hero's journey, Mia, but it's probably too young for teenagers or so forth to work out that sense of purpose and meaning that they get in chapter 3 because they're still on that hero's journey. Having said that, everyone can start the morning with this same question. How can I be the best part of someone else's day today? A 10-year-old can ask themselves that question, which unlocks purpose mindset and a sense of how can I help someone else? And it might be my brother, my younger brother who's struggling. It might be a mate. I might just be able to help my mum who's doing it pretty tough at the moment.
God, I wish my kids would ask themselves that question in the morning.
I'm in touch with that emotion. Yeah. But we get stuck in chapter 2.
Yeah.
Right? And there's a whole lot of reasons why. There's typically 5 hazards that keep us stuck in chapter 2 of our hero's journey. One might be the imposter. You might have heard of imposter syndrome where you tell yourself I'm not worthy.
Know it well.
Yeah, the second one might be the rationalizer. We're making excuses and we're in denial of the truth and we're just kind of rationalizing our life away. The good news is there's antidotes to all of those. So the antidote to the rationalizer is establishing your values to hold yourself accountable to yourself in these moments when times are tough. The third one is the loner, right? And that's the classic leader who thinks he or she has to do everything on their own and doesn't ask questions, sees vulnerability as a weakness and doesn't have any mentors in his or her life, right? So the antidote to there is obviously creating mentors and people and live from that premise that no one in this world can do anything in this world on their own. Yeah, we all need people to help us. The fourth one is the glory seeker. And that's the classic leader who wants to get the credit for everything, wants to be recognized for everything. And it's typically someone who hasn't identified their intrinsic motivations, things that really light them up internally as a human. And the fifth one is the shooting star. And that's the classic person who achieves an enormous amount in a short space of time, but typically leaves a trail of carnage and destruction behind them in terms of their family or their colleagues, right? Now, we all have elements of those archetypes in all of us. So the goal is to identify which ones are more pronounced because then you can develop those antidotes to them and then hopefully work your way into chapter 3 of your hero's journey. And that's where you start to unlock this sense of purpose and meaning. And it's not a new religion, by the way. Mark Twain said 100 years ago that 2 most important days in your life are the day you're born and the day you find out why. So when you can ask yourself these questions is, okay, what is it that I do and who do I do it for? Yeah, and what do they want or need and how do they change as a result? Now, sometimes we unlock our purpose through crucible moments, right? A lot of people are unlocking their purpose right now through the pandemic. That phrase, don't waste the pandemic, if you like, in terms of live as if you were living for the second time and as if we had acted wrongly the first time, to steal a Viktor Frankl quote. So you say, okay, how do I find a sense of meaning through this? And sometimes we can, as I said, through our darkest times can come our greatest growth if we develop a perspective of go, wow, okay, that curiosity might then unlock this. Okay, well, I've lost my job or my life is altered but so dramatically. So am I just here to show up and make money anyway? Or fundamentally I stand for something, I care for something that lights me up. There's a legacy I want to leave the planet. Or, at my funeral, this is what will be celebrated about me in terms of my impact on others. And sometimes we start to ask ourselves those questions. And through these dark times, we can establish our values, or we can establish our sense of why, if you like, not the what and the how, because I'm sure Mamma Mia will take so many different curves along your journey, right? But that's the great thing about unlocking your North Star, your why, your purpose, if you like, and nothing can screw with that, yeah? They can attack what you do and how you do it, but they can't attack the why. That is so fundamental, and you can control that for the rest of your life. Again, and that's pretty exciting when someone unlocks their sense of why, their purpose, if you like.
Can you give me an example of someone who perhaps isn't in a leadership role or high profile? Can you give me some other examples of whys and other examples of purposes?
Yeah, I can give you mine. That might be a simple starting place.
Yeah, but you're a big shot. Like you're...
Oh, yeah, sure. Really, really. And as I said, it often comes through dark times, right? So for me anyway, from a career point of view, we laid off 150 staff back in the Nike days in Hong Kong, and it was pretty much the whole office, right? There's only 5 of us left. And I had to work out whether I was going to move to North America with Nike or go back to Australia or stay in Hong Kong. And I don't know if you've been to Hong Kong, but the Peak Cafe is the highest part of Hong Kong. And I went up to the Peak Cafe for 2 days. No, I wasn't going to jump off. I was just trying to work out my sense of purpose and what I wanted to do with my life. And after 2 days with a bit of stimulus and questions that I'd obviously worked on with athletes, I wrote down, I just want to help athletes do things better and be better for it. I had no idea what that meant, and I had no idea how I was going to do that. And the last 2.5 decades have gone quite a few different paths, right? But I just stayed true to that. And then I started mentoring teenagers and executives. So all I did was reframe my definition of an athlete. And now for me, an athlete is anyone who likes to compete, have fun and play, which is pretty much the whole world, right? Because there's no one who doesn't like to compete, have fun and play. And do things better, and being better for it will take down a different course in terms of where people are at. So the process is really, as I mentioned, asking yourself a series of sub-questions, smaller bite-sized questions that you can get your teeth into. And as I said, we've got a whole exercise around this, but it evolves around these smaller questions about, what really excites me about helping others? And who are those others, by the way? And in its simplest form, purpose is to do something for someone else.
What if you don't want to help others?
If you don't want to help others?
I don't mean if you're like a dick, but I mean if you like your purpose is not... Can you have a non-altruistic purpose?
I'm sure you can. Yeah, absolutely. I think the impact, though, will be on someone or something, right? But you only need one other person or an animal in which to contribute to their happiness in some way, shape or form.
So it could be, I want to be the best parent I can be, or I want to be the best friend or dog owner, or are they all purposes?
Absolutely. Yeah, you're talking about helping someone else, serving someone else, doing something for someone else. And at its simplest form, that's what purpose is, to do something for someone else. And the good news is you get to decide what it is you want to do for them and who it is you want to do it for. And as I said, you only need one other person in your life to form a community in which to contribute to their happiness in some way, shape or form. So to know that you're playing a role to be of value to someone or something else in your life.
And is it dangerous to index it to a particular person or a particular animal? Because being the best parent you can be, your child will grow up and leave home, or being the best partner you can be, your partner might leave you or you might want to leave them. Is that a risk?
Yeah, you want to make your purpose as high-arching. There's no finish line to it. You'll never achieve it. You'll never get there, right? And that's what gets you up in the morning on a shitty Monday morning when you're checking emails and so forth. So
you won't get there. That's an important thing to say, isn't it?
There is no finish line. Yeah,
Right.
it's your why. The what and the how, yeah, you can achieve those. That's the difference between setting goals for yourself, which are more specific and time-bound. And my goal might be to live my purpose through my role as a parent with my kids at the moment, right? I bring my purpose to life through my kids. But the conditions of our lives will change. Our kids will grow up and move out. It doesn't mean your purpose will live on forever, and you apply that attitude or that approach or that philosophy to someone else in your life. And it might be community related, it might be cause related, it might be commercially related through your job. Your purpose you should be able to bring into every aspect of your life, right? And that's why you can go as high arching as you possibly can in terms of the language, so that you can affect many people. Because you've got different roles in your life, Mia, because you are a mum, you are a wife, you are, I'm not sure, a sister, a daughter, You are a leader of a business. You also play a role in that business. You probably a lot of things for the community. You're a friend. So you've probably got 8 or 9 different roles in your life. And you want to be able to bring that sense of purpose through all of those roles. You don't want to have a different purpose statement for different kind of segments of your life. You can bring it to life, that philosophy. And it might be just to love others, by the way. Jim Carrey's purpose statement was to free others from concern. And he started that with his comedy, and then he worked into his philanthropy, then he's worked in the education system and so forth. So, yeah, when you work out,
I like it.
you work out what is your why.
Yeah.
You want to be able to extract every ounce of energy with the years that you've got on this planet to contribute and find that sense of, I guess, purpose and meaning and fulfillment that will bring that sense of happiness to our lives.
And just finally, Ben, if someone's waking up, I mean, as we're all discovering in COVID times, the mood swings and the highs and lows can be sudden and they can be intense. If someone is in the depths, what's the one thing that they can do that's going to make a difference to how they're feeling? If they don't have much energy, they can just do one thing.
The very first thing you can do is belly breathing, to take a really deep breath through your diaphragm, if you like, because it's the quickest mind hack to get rid of that cortisol in our body, that fear hormone that when we feel like we're under attack, if you like. Because if you're about to be attacked by a lion, you're not going to be doing a deep belly breath, right? You're going to be up in your lungs and you're going to be ready to fight or flight, yeah? So you take a deep belly breath, your brain's going, well, clearly I'm not under attack here. So it's just a really quick way to, take a deep breath for 4 seconds, hold it for 4 seconds, and then exhale for 4 seconds. So that's the first thing you can do, yeah? The second thing you do is ask yourself some questions, because once you have that curiosity, if you like, apply curiosity to the situation, these questions unlock this dopamine, this pattern recognition, this aha. So how can I get through this? What is happening to me right now? Who can help me, if you like? And those questions, that curiosity turns that adversity into a possibility to give you a sense of confidence to be able to get through this situation that you're in, if you like. That in terms of really simple reframing, if you like. And then you can apply some other simple mindset principles, which might be the gratitude manifesto, or replacing expectation with appreciation, as we've discussed. And that appreciation for, focusing on what I've got rather than moaning for what I haven't got, if you like. And you can do that with a gratitude manifesto. And we talk about at Mojo in terms of win the morning, win the day. And the fastest way to do that, as soon as you wake up in the morning, is to practice the gratitude manifesto. I'm so thankful and grateful for ... yeah? And then whatever comes into your mind in that moment, and it could be materialistic, it could be the fact that you got to have a hot shower or sleep in a bed or have a hot meal, which a third of the world doesn't get to do, right? It doesn't matter what it is, but it's the act of being grateful primes your consciousness in the most amazing way and releases this sense of expectation that I should be different or my life should be different, if you like, and focuses more on a sense of appreciation or being thankful or just feeling lucky, as we discussed right at the outset, for what I've got. So another thing you can do is reclaim, talking about what kind of human Mia Freedman is, you reclaim your human being words, your to-be list. I am brave, calm, supportive, playful, kind, grateful. If you don't have a purpose statement, you do, but if you don't have one, you simply ask, how can I be the best part of someone else's day today? And you can reclaim your values, right? And your values are verbs when you are acting at your best, if you like. And a lot of our clients are developing their values right now through these tough times, because that's typically where our values are unlocked, right? Because if there's any ever shit going on in your life within your control, and by the way, there's a lot out of your control with COVID, but whenever there's any shit going on inside your life that's within your control, more often than not, there's a disconnect between what you truly value and how you're showing up in the world. So the goal is to reconnect with your values, your authenticity that holds yourself accountable. And you can do that by simply asking yourself, okay, what's one of the worst things that's ever happened to me? And it might be right now, right? Then you ask yourself another question, what got me through that worst chapter of my life? Or what's getting me through this worst chapter of my life now? And the answer to that question is more often than not where your values are. And it could be courage or love, or it could be perseverance or resilience, yeah? Or it could be optimism, yeah, or positivity. It doesn't matter what it is, but once you can connect with that word, that what you truly value, and then you define it. You have to define it, because love is different from Mia Freedman, what it is to Ben Crow, right? So define what love means to you, and then just work out 2 or 3 simple behaviors that you can measure yourself against. to hold yourself accountable to that value. And then you just practice, sit outside yourself for a week and say, okay, am I living by my values, my authenticity, my integrity, if you like? And I guarantee when you start to connect with your values, you connect with your to-being words, you connect with your purpose, you connect with your courage mantra, which you so beautifully described right at the start. That's when you're starting to own your story. And then you don't give a shit what anyone thinks about you. It's because what you think about yourself. And you celebrate yourself, not berate yourself. You celebrate that authenticity and you practice it, right? Because there are so many distractions, especially with the media industry and the news media industry, that's creating this awful cortisol cocktail of controversy and comparison, if you like. So, and that's what's happening, unfortunately, because Mia, if you don't own your story, as soon as you get up in the morning and you lift your head up, the outside world will try and tell you who you are. And the three biggest storytellers trying to tell you who you are right now is the media industry, social media, and advertising industry. They're the three biggest storytellers, right? One's predicated on negativity, one we get distracted by social comparison, and the third one's predicated on shame, if you like, because you're not enough until you buy that car or that handbag or that watch. And it wasn't designed to do that, right? It was designed to promote attributes and benefits of products, but it's got so clever in psychology, right? So you've got to be able to own your own story, and that's where resilience comes from. The ability to deal with adversity by saying, I'm not going to let this determine me. And you realize it's not the experiences of our life that determine our life. It's the meaning we put behind the experiences, the narrative behind the experiences, the stories we tell ourselves about that experience. Two people can have the exact same experience, but two very different stories. Person one, we say, you see, this always happens to me. This is my lot in life. I'm a loser. I'm a victim. This is my life. Person two will say, whoa, that was heavy. But I'm not going to let this determine my life. I'm going to dedicate this moment and overcome this and turn this adversity into a possibility. So there's only ever the response about whatever life throws at us. It's not conditional upon whether it's good times or bad times. We own our story unconditionally. And that gives us the power to then work out what we want and work out our goals and dreams and our values and our purpose, if you like, and then see what happens. Right? No guarantees, no expectations or promises that it'll all work out, but that's okay. That's just called living, yeah? And then life becomes this amazing adventure, this experiment, this work in progress, this hero's journey into the unknown, where you're allowed to fall down, you're allowed to be imperfect, you're allowed to make mistakes, and that's okay. And if we can show up from that place, it's like, fuck COVID, right? We own our story unconditionally, yeah, and have the courage to go after what we want. We've got the courage to fall down and get up again. We've got the courage to go after our dreams, and we've got the courage to be disliked. We don't want to be disliked. We've got the courage to be disliked because I no longer care what you think about me, but I care about you. And if we can show up from that and have that sense of compassion for ourselves, then we can be compassionate to others. And that sense of kindness to ourselves, then we can create these random acts of kindness to others, and we stop judging each other as something is good or bad, and we have that acceptance that it just is what it is, yeah? Accept ourselves, and then we can encourage and help others along the way.
Ben, thank you. That was amazing. How can people find out more about your course?
Yeah, they can literally just go onto mojocrow.com or on any of our other channels and, download the course. It's 4 weeks old, and we literally designed it to give everyone access to the exercises and the programs that we've been doing, I guess, one-on-one with clients all over the world. And it can, as I said, you might be a corporate athlete, a student athlete, or a professional athlete, but we're all in chase of the same two things, yeah? Who am I? What do I want? And how do I get there? So let me ask you this question now, Mia. Who are you? Next time someone asks you this question, who is Mia Friedman? What are you going to say?
Oh, I don't know. I'm a brave, kind, supportive person.
Beautiful.
Am I? Is that what I am?
Yeah. Well, we are the stories we tell ourselves, right? And if you connect truly with those words, in terms of when you want to be that human being, you absolutely are. That's who you are. And you can control that 100%. Like, you can set goals and dreams for yourself, but you show up from that brave, playful, kind, grateful human being, and just show up from that place and then see what happens.
I love it. I like the idea of being able to control something right now.
In touch with that emotion.
Funny story about me and Ben. I had forgotten that we had met before, but When we first started talking before the interview, he reminded me that when I was working in magazines at Clio and I was helping compile the annual list of Australia's 50 most eligible bachelors, he was one of the bachelors that I compiled. I had forgotten about that, but hasn't he gone on to do great things? I don't know about you, but I am definitely going to work on my courage mantra. I think I'm going to do his course as well. It just sounds really interesting. Ben has helped so many people and it's something he's incredibly passionate about. So if you want to learn more from him, you can download his app. It's called Mojo and you can find it in your app store. And there are also, if you search Mojo Crow on YouTube, you can find a bunch of videos that he's done where he talks about this stuff in a little bit more depth. And if you've got a bit of a productivity mindset happening right now, can I suggest listening to our brand new productivity podcast? It's called 8 Minutes to Change Your Work Life, and it's hosted by Deborah Ho, a viral productivity expert. And every week, Deb and a handful of guests are going to be sharing their hacks and tips to help you. Here's a taster.
Today, we're going to be talking to some of the most organised people we know and asking them a simple question. What tech tools do you use to organise your life? But before we get to them, I'm going to share a few tech tools I can't live without. And the first one is my Google Calendar. I cannot survive one day without checking it. I have all my events, calls, and appointments blocked out on the calendar, and it takes all the chaos out of my brain and onto my screen in a way that totally calms me. I really love looking at my calendar in the monthly view because that's how I visualize time in my head. It might be different for you. I'm always thinking about the future, so having an overall view of the next couple of weeks is a high priority of mine. The next tech tool is also a Google product. It is Google Keep, and it is the best note-taking app that I have used for the past 5 to 7 years, I'd say. It is just really simple. What I love about it is that it syncs very quickly and automatically, so anything that I type on my desktop will be synced to my phone immediately, and that's kind of a great way for me to just send links to myself, like transfer things over. The interface is so simple, and I just like how easy it is to write things down, and it's very sticky in the way that I always check it.
Thank you for listening to this No Filter. You can join me, Holly Wainwright, and Jessie Stevens 3 times a week on Mamamia Out Loud. That's the podcast where we talk about all the things women are actually talking about. And you can find it wherever you get your podcasts. The assistant producer of No Filter is Lucy Neville. The executive producer is Eliza Ratliff. I'm Mia Friedman, and I'll see you on the Mamamia app.
Mamamia acknowledges the traditional owners of the land we have recorded this podcast on, the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. We pay our respects to their elders, past and present, and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander cultures.